Hello, and welcome to another fully live surprise episode of Hacking with Friends that's actually happening at the time that we say we're going to. Usually we're about an hour late or so, but today I figured, let's get it done at the normal time. So, hello to everyone who might be surprised that we're not running fully on Hacker Time today. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and we're going to talk about a number of different things today, including my streaming box. We're going to talk a little bit about the Nugget, and we're also going to talk about some cool updates that have come up over the last week. So hello, everyone in the chat. I see Jacob, Curtis, and Elmore. Good to see you guys. If you have any questions as I go along, this is a Q&A stream, and I'm here to answer your hopefully hacking-related questions, but I'm down to get a little philosophical at times if you've got another question. So, all right, we have a lot to go over this week. I'm going to start out with one of my favorite community contributions that I've seen in a while. So I just have to give this a shout out. This is by Ketspazio. So I'm sorry, you'll have to say your name for me. But this is a Bluetooth spammer that has been ported over to the Nugget. So I saw this on our community Discord. You can find that at nugget.dev, and then there's a link right there. It used to be, I had a short link for it, but somebody kept reporting it for spam. Kind of ironic now that I'm trying to share the spammer. But this is the sour apple, or let's see, the other one is apple juice. And these attacks have been ported over to a number of different devices. They've been ported over to the Flipper. They're kind of like, here you can see the result. They're not like a super malicious attack. It's pretty much just like annoying. It keeps doing these pop-ups on Apple devices. And on this port, you can actually select which device you want to appear as. So these Bluetooth Nuggets are new. We've only sold a couple of kits that are able to create them, but they're kind of the future of where we see the Nugget going. And it was really cool to see some of our community members jumping ahead and actually making something that is so incredibly cool. And the fact that it has an interface and that interface is cat-faced, that's really just the finishing touch for me that I needed. So yeah, wow. I really have to say that I'm like so pleased that this has also been made so that it's not just a command line tool. One of the whole reasons why I worked so hard to make the Nugget accessible and friendly was so that if we're making proof of concepts and if we're making something to demonstrate to others, we have the ability to use the screen, we have the ability to use the NeoPixel to indicate status. And I think, I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to go back or just wait for it to go forward again because it's a short, that when this is doing the attack, does it do a little Bluetooth symbol? Like, I'm gonna have to see. Anyway, that level of innovation I think is incredibly cool. If you want to know more about the Bluetooth Nugget, I can tell you about it. It's basically, you can build it from a kit. These Nuggets are designed, or were originally designed, to be soldered by students. So we wanted to make it so it was easy enough for a complete beginner to solder this on their first time. Admittedly, the NeoPixel is a little bit challenging, but if you can solder one together, and we did this, oh, it is the Bluetooth symbol. Okay, I think that's so charming. Anyway, if you can solder this together, then you can put whatever microcontroller you want on the back. And there's a couple of microcontrollers that are supported, but by far the most interesting one is the ESP32S3. So our good friend Capazio went ahead and soldered on the ESP32S3 and then ported over this Bluetooth attack, which again is not too much of an attack. It's more of like an annoyance, but it certainly does affect a lot of devices around. And it remains to be seen whether or not this is going to be mitigated so that it's less annoying for iPhone users who have this nearby. I will say at the C3 conference, there were definitely people doing this attack. I don't think they were doing it on a cat-shaped device. I think they were just doing a flipper. But yeah, a lot of iPhone users were complaining about that. Okay, so what else do we have this week? Well, okay, so let's see. I have a couple of things that I highlighted. Oh, my screaming box. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. But while we're on the Nugget, I was just doing a little bit of reflection after going through the numbers on the camp that we just attended. And this year, about 1,000 people have learned ethical hacking or programming or bad USB attacks, or even how to do WLED light control through the Nugget. So this PCB was originally like a love letter to my cat. His name is Hand Banana, and one of his most common nicknames is the Nugget because when we got him, he was about the size of a chicken nugget. So now he's about the size of like a rotisserie chicken, but we still call him Nugget. And because that's his nickname, we even had oh, thanks, download helper. That's exactly what I wanted from you. We even had a drawing, kind of immortalized on the PCB. So everybody that has a nugget, if you flip it over and look on the backside, you will see the cat the cat that inspired it all. And in this case, he has a very short, stubby tail and a very big nose, and that's how you can tell that this is an authentic nugget. If your nugget has a long tail or a small nose, that is not genuine. This is the mark of authenticity. So yeah, I mean, this was the original drawing of a nugget. There's an even earlier version actually that's around somewhere where I just drew this on what's called an aqua note. It's like a little shower note where I was like, okay, this thing's gonna have ears and it's gonna have kind of this angular face, and this is the base hardware it's gonna have on it. And a couple changes happened, like the breakouts ended up moving to the side, and the NeoPixel and this were kind of spaced a little bit more evenly, and these were turned into whiskers. But essentially, this what the design ended up being. And for anyone who's curious about the origin of the Nugget, I was working on a different open source project. I was collaborating on it, and I basically was looking at the D-Author wristwatch and was like, this project is so cool, but there's a couple things I hate about it. One of them is like the button that like goes up, down, left, right, like you can press in. It just like breaks off really easily, and I don't really like it as a piece of hardware. I just, mine break all the time. I don't like them. Another was I wanted it to be so that you could do proof of concepts like Capazio just did, and make them super, super simple, engaging, and visual. So that was really a goal that I liked about the D-Author wristwatch. I didn't feel like it was quite there. So I was collaborating with an open source designer on building our own kind of like educational version that's like purely meant for teaching people. And as an educator, I was super excited about this. And then they dropped off. They kind of just stopped responding to me. And I had all these parts. So I had like hundreds of screens and a bunch of buttons and all this other stuff, and I had to do something with it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to invest my own money and time and energy into this. And I put together an excellent team of people, and I paid a lot of money to get this prototype up and running. So originally, we diverted all of the income we were making from our content business and $14,000 just out of my pocket to make PCB designs and test them out and attempt to find something that actually worked. And there is a super long lineage of nuggets in my place in Montana they're like primordial nuggets. They're like square, like have like buttons that poke through and are like if you squeeze it, they cut you on the back. Crazy to me how many different iterations of this design and how expensive it was to produce until we got a version that is now open source. So what's cool about that is even after all this expense and even after all of this investment, like we wanted to make sure that anybody else who was an educator was able to use this and make it, and also that people who were in areas where it's too expensive to ship can just wait a little bit longer but make their own using PCBWay or another service. This was cool. Like this is really something that I feel like resonated with people. And I did a talk at the C3 conference about how we use this for teaching and all the different classes that we've taught with it and all the different lessons we've covered with it. And overall, this was a really, I think, decent investment because it made teaching for me so much easier than it used to be. That I used to work with microcontrollers all the time, and trying to teach people how to use them was almost I'm not going to say an impossible task, but once the class got over 25 people, it was just assumed we were going to have to leave like one or two people behind. And as an educator, I really hate that. This was the first opportunity I've had to make something that was so accessible that not only were people not intimidated by it, they thought it was cute, they wanted to try it, but also they actually felt like they'd learned how to do something at the end of a 2-hour class that made them want to pick it up and use it again. For the first year or so making this, there were some really serious bugs and nobody ever reported them, which convinced me that people weren't really using this. They basically like were buying it and then they were setting it aside and they were just kind of being like, okay, that's cool, like, and not touching it enough to find out that there were like things that didn't work or things that were pretty broken. So after switching to focusing more on education, we found that the bugs were revealed. Like after walking a class of like 25 kids through using this on all the different lessons that we thought we could do, we found that some stuff was broken and that some stuff maybe wasn't as exciting as we thought it was. And then we found some other things like kids like drawing like an illustration and putting it on the screen was actually motivation for learning programming. So this was a pretty incredible journey. I just have to thank everybody that helped out with this. We have our original designer, Alex, who worked on this, who created the first prototypes and dragged this through many revisions. We have Angelina Savoy, who came on and worked with a lot of different a lot of different elements to make additional things like our Meow Mixer, and then we also have Brandon and other people on our team, Aria, everybody who came with us to the C3 conference, Ash. All these people contributed substantially to not just making this into a piece of hardware, but also reaching so many people. Just at the C3 conference alone, we had about 175 friends out there in the conference that we had met through teaching classes. So thank you to everyone who has supported this project and all these new creators who have gotten out there and got to affect so many people. It's been a really incredible journey. And the fact that this project is still open source, you can make your own, it's pretty cool. You know, like when you're making something that's supposed to be a tool for educators, making sure that they have access to it is probably one of the more important parts. So this overall design has been something that a lot of people have created on their own. And even I think like Hacker Boxes has somewhat recently picked it up again and started giving it out as one of their boxes. So if you encounter the design, look for the authentic hand banana on the back, and that's how you'll know that that it's a real one. But anyway, so just reflecting on that, it was cool to have so many people just learn about the things that I'm passionate about this year through this open source design. So also, speaking of reflections, I just want to shout out some of my cool QR code research. I want to explain what each one of these is really quickly, and I see I've got some excellent questions that I'm going to stop ignoring. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm just excited. And also, Des, you're not bothering me. I'm here to answer your question. Oh wait, you don't have a question. You want me to buy something? Okay, you're banned forever. Okay, bye. So this QR code is the big one, is a stencil. So I can like paint through it or do whatever I want to it, and I can make this over and over and over again. And admittedly, this is not as easy as just having like a laser cutter. But if you don't have a laser cutter, you just have a 3D printer. This bad boy takes about 2 hours to print and caused a thermal runaway, which somehow like broke my printer. So this was actually the last print that I made, the really big one. So that's one strategy, is you can make a stencil. The problem is it's really hard if you're not on a perfectly smooth surface to be able to make sure that stencil is readable. So if you're making things like some of the evil QR codes that I mentioned in a couple of my workshops that like allow you to track someone or maybe even take over their data connection, this is a pretty viable strategy unless you're doing it on a rough surface. Next up, we have dual layer QR codes. So this is a 3D printed QR code that's extremely durable, and I'm able to do a base layer of black, stop the print, change out the filament and to white, and then print the data. So this is pretty cool. It's actually relatively easy to do in Prusa Slicer. So if you wanted to try out an extremely durable way of creating QR codes, the only trade-off is that this is one-sided. So by that I mean one side of this is just completely black, and then the other side has the data. That might not be a problem for you, but I was interested in pushing things a little bit further. So over here, this is, I would say, a two-sided QR code. Both sides of this QR code have information. And the way that this is possible is actually super cool. So first, you print the black. So you'll do a print that's the black. And then, without removing the first one, you print a second print directly on top of it that is the white part of it. So what's crazy is a lot of these junctures are actually not really well connected. There's only a little kind of like sporadic contact between the black and the white, but it's two-sided. So I can flip this to either side and scan it and get QR code data. To me, that is super, super cool. The ability to make something that's two-sided from a 3D printer is much more difficult, especially removing it properly. And then the durability, I think, might also be a little bit more questionable, but it won't fade in the sun, which I think is really cool. And I think that it's durable enough that if it were reinforced by like a little clear piece of plastic or something, you'd kind of be onto something. And it's actually really relatively fast to print as well. So this is and then finally, this is my research into high density QR codes. This is the basically the highest resolution of data I've been able to get on like a small QR code. So this is like a little introduction, and it just talks about where my work is and such, and who I am and what I do. but it's a good like paragraph or so, and includes like a web URL as well. So these are all 3D printed QR codes. This one's double sided. It's just printed on like a single layer. So this is just one layer. This is two layers, one black, one white, and then this is also two layers, one black and one white. And then again, this is a giant stencil, which does work, but you need to prepare it and remove any islands. So there's a program you can use for this that's originally created for making like laser cut versions of this. But a lot that I learned this year about making QR codes, and frankly, I think that making 3D printed QR codes is super durable. Obviously, they can be defaced by just kind of painting over them, but the same is true of any QR code. The fact that this has depth means that it's actually kind of easier to repair them because you can just go over the top with like a flat object and repaint them. Um, all right. Okay, so here's a question. Recently seen a hack using large antenna to hack a key fob to open up cars and steal them. Anything like a D-Stike to blue team the fobs at home. Interesting, interesting. Okay, so the attack that's being discussed here is basically a large antenna is used to amplify a signal that usually requires proximity in order to be received. So let's say that we are trying to unlock a car and the car will automatically unlock if the owner approaches with the key fob. Okay, so if I, the attacker, am able to bring an antenna and basically kind of do a man-in-the-middle attack where I amplify the signal of the key fob, even though it's like in the house or like far away from the car, then the car may think that the key fob is super close by and automatically unlock the car. So a lot of these really new cars, like that's how it works, right? You have the key and it just opens for you, and then you just press the button and you drive away. You don't even think about where your key is anymore. That is what's being exploited here. Is effectively it's kind of a man-in-the-middle attack where like you are relaying the signals from the key fob to the car and vice versa, and facilitating communication as though they were right next to each other or as though that person was inside the car. Um, I don't know of any blue team tools that do this actually, so I might not be the right person to ask about this. I would suspect things like an Ubertooth One or like other sorts of like radio, software defined radios would be the correct thing to look at here, and maybe like a hack RF1 would also be like something to take a look at. I haven't utilized those to their full potential, but when I hear like that sort of thing, like that immediately, that's the device that I think of. Um, and yes, that is pretty sick. Let's see. I'm gonna go through your questions right now and make sure I didn't miss any good ones that aren't advertisements. Hey, yes, I'm glad you don't have to listen to the replay today. Okay, so I've got more stuff to talk about. And I am here to answer your questions. So once I got some more, I will do that. I wanted to talk about, let's see. Oh, my screaming device. Yes, I knew I was forgetting something. So, some of you might remember that in like around Halloween, I made this device that sits in a dark place and then screams when a light is detected. Now, the idea here is let me get my little screamer. Um, the idea here is that we have this long probe. There we go. We have this long probe that sticks out from a pile of trash, and then this little LDR is basically sensing for light all of the time, and there's a microcontroller in here that's waiting to be woken up whenever this little like anglerfish probe kind of thing senses a flashlight in the darkness in this like dark place. So then there is a microcontroller in here and then a speaker mounted on the outside that begins screaming super, super loud about 30 seconds. It's actually set on a random timer, somewhere between like 30 and 60 seconds after it detects the light. So I'm actually really nervous to open this because it's been sitting in a dark and gross place for about 2 months, and it could be full of cockroaches. So I'm gonna really stuck. Okay, I think the seal on it is good enough that it didn't get bugs in it, but I'm still pretty nervous. I don't, oh, okay, it's kind of, it opened. Okay. I don't see any bugs. That's good. And then all the electronics seem healthy. There's an unknown piece of plant matter on the inside that I'm gonna ignore. There we go. They survived. So what is all of this? We've got a battery, we've got a charging circuit, which also conveniently can take a solar module if that was an option. And then we've got this handy amplifier that is going out to the speaker, and that is taking signals from this ESP32 S2 board. And it's basically, this is listening from here for a flashlight, and then this is outputting audio on this audio amplifier. And we've also configured it to maximum output. So pretty pleased to see this project is still alive and kicking. There's definitely some modifications I want to make to it. I want to make sure that it actually goes into like deep sleep mode. Um, Here, what could something like that be used for? So I would say presence sensing or detecting people who are, let's say, trespassing or going into a place where they shouldn't go. Even something like a surprise gift, where when someone opens it, like the inside of a dark box is one thing, and then when it opens, like the sensor would be able to tell that it's been opened, and then do something nice, presumably. My hands feel itchy after touching this. I don't like it. Yuck. Um, but the idea here is being able to do presence detection. So that's detecting like an unnatural light in an area where there's not usually light, and then doing something. In this case, screaming really loud. So if you had an area where people were like, I don't know, like sneaking into and they weren't supposed to go, there's two ways of, you could be like authoritarian and be like, call the cops on them, or you could just make them think it's haunted. And I would tend to go with that one. It's just more fun for everyone. So yeah, that is what it could be used for. All right. So here's a question. What advice would you give to someone who is new to hacking? The advice I would give to someone who's new to hacking would be mostly to be aware that hacking or ethical hacking or cybersecurity is a huge area. So huge that I keep forgetting about the division sometimes between all the areas, that like security people versus makers versus like all these other people are kind of all included under the same umbrella, but are not necessarily the same. They don't have the same interests. They don't have the same backgrounds. It's really kind of interesting that there's so many people included in the space, and yet people only kind of tend to see people like themselves, which is weird, and forget about the rest. Like computer science people think that cybersecurity is all about computer science or programming. Networking engineers think that it's all about networking. Electronics people think it's all about prototyping. Everybody has their own kind of bias. So whatever it is that you're strongly interested in, and whatever it is that you identify with in that space, whether it's figuring out how technology works, doing investigations, like red teaming, like all of that stuff is valid, and you can specialize in it without touching some of these other things that might be much harder for you. And that's okay. A lot of people are kind of gatekeepy about this field and make it so that it's more difficult for beginners to feel like they're a part of it. But truthfully, nobody knows everything, and everybody looks stupid at some point. So the ability to put yourself into a situation and learn quickly while looking stupid is core, I think, to cybersecurity and ethical hacking, because nobody is an expert at everything. All this stuff is super complicated. A lot of it is dry. And if you're interested enough to pursue it, then that gives you the right to be here. Like that's how I feel about it. So yeah, like don't be discouraged by how much there is out there. Focus on things that you identify with and that are maybe kind of easy for you, like to start with, because it'll hold your interest and it'll get you through some of the dry stuff. And also utilize as many resources as you can, because what you get in school might not be enough to get you through it. So that means doing like CTFs or participating in conferences or otherwise getting involved in the community or contributing back wherever you can. Those sorts of interactions will get you not only known by the community and kind of accepted, but also it will help other people who are in a similar situation as you to get better at what they're doing. So I used to teach classes where I would like learn something on like, Monday, and then on like the next week, by next Monday, I would be trying to teach a class for other people on how to do it. And I wasn't pretending to be an expert. I was just making sure that I knew what I had learned. And then when other people were interested in it, like being able to answer questions or follow up on it meant that I felt like I was ready to move on, to learning the next thing. So take advantage of resources. Don't feel like you need to learn everything. Settling in on something really critical like networking or programming or like electronics is going to take you a while, and that's okay. It seems like everybody's like such an expert at everything, but really it's because you have a bunch of not st- it's kind of a stereotype, but you have a bunch of like ADD people running around learning different things, and on a long enough time scale, that's going to look pretty intimidating. but most of those people started in a very similar position to you. It's just they were able to indulge their curiosity, and they were able to absorb what they learned after throwing themselves at different situations, and that's pretty helpful. So as much hands-on experience you can get also is truly valuable. um, in my experience, people don't value academic experience as much as hands-on experience in cybersecurity. Where if you can prove that you have great numbers at something, some part of what is, I guess, considered to be like a critical thing in cybersecurity, then it's a lot easier to get a job than if you're just like fresh out of school but you've never done anything in the real world. So um, all right. Let's talk about other stuff. Suggested soldering tools. I'm sorry, this is something I have to address. Yes. So right now there's a bit of a craze going on for the pine sol. And if you are like a maker, or if you've been to a maker conference, or anything really, you've probably encountered one of these. I've been talking about them to everybody that does workshops and such. So this is the pine sol. I literally have one on my table, I'm sure. Yes, here it is. Okay, of course, always one within reach. So this is the pine sol. I got one right here in my hand. It is a 32-bit RISC-V system on a chip. It's got a OLED monochrome display. It takes USB Type-C, and also it has a barrel jack as well. So it's got replaceable plastic parts, and then it takes a number of standardized tips. So this little sucker is the number one recommendation I have for anybody who needs to do this on a budget, because on Amazon right now, these things are going for like $40, like $40. So I was talking to a makerspace, and they were buying these those horrible cheap soldering irons that have that like toothy dial that you have to dial up and down, but the toothy dial gets caught on stuff and will like turn itself all the way up, and it doesn't have an automatic shut off. So that means that the soldering iron that people usually buy on Amazon for about the same price, maybe a little less, will turn red hot and stay red hot and ruin the tip and cause like fire and a burn hazard. I hate them. I hate them. So like the makerspace I was working with, they bought half of these like awful like cursed soldering irons, and I was like, please stop, please just stop, like please just buy this one instead. They bought a couple of these, and they're like, okay, we're replacing the old ones, and now the fire hazard ones sit in a drawer, and these are the ones that the makerspace that I worked with in Missoula now use, and they are very happy with them. These are lovely, lovely soldering irons. So of course, like there's some, if you're having like a station and you want to get something that's more like $120 or whatever, there's like a Hacko, like one of the like yellow and blue soldering irons you see like in most schools. Like those are the ones that we have for our like soldering of the nugget. Like if we're soldering hundreds of nuggets, we're not going to use a pine sol generally unless we're like out. So yeah, definitely get something a little beefier if you're going to be sitting down and soldering literally hundreds of things. But if you're just going to be soldering things occasionally, or you want a good, powerful, and compact soldering iron to bring around with you, that's also like $40, won't turn red hot for no reason, and also has adjustable controls. Like it's really, really a nice piece of hardware, I have to say. So one of my favorite pieces of equipment out there, I'm literally gripping one right now. And it is a very, very nice soldering iron. Um, I recently got the TS-101, wonderful thing and quite cheap. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I have to say, the TS 100, the TS 80, and I guess the TS 101. I actually haven't seen that. They are all perfectly serviceable soldering irons. They work extremely well. They have a number of interchangeable tips. They're just really, really good kit. I think that the TS 80 and the TS 100s are also around like the same price. So yes, I have to say these are all good choices, honestly. And you can't really go wrong with any of them. I went ahead and got a clear version of this. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Um, but yeah, I went ahead and got a clear version that I used at the conference, and I thought it looked really, really cool. And now that I have it, I realized that it's like actually kind of big. Um, let me see if I can find this. Uh, the TS 100 is okay. Here it is. Yes, yes, yes. I'm just gonna pull up a picture because otherwise it's Amazon's gonna dox me again. Okay, okay, 1 second. So I used this at the conference that I was just at, and I found it to be a really good soldering iron, honestly. It got hot like super, super fast. Oh, look at that. That's so cool. I did a screenshot. Okay, well, We get what we get on this one. Okay. All right. Right. So I want to give a shout out to Patrick Wardle. Right as I was taking a screenshot of the soldering iron, his excellent tool popped up warning me that Google was attempting to install like a launch agent. So I terminated that. But you can, sorry guys, you can kind of see what this looks like. It's just like a clear TS 100. It's actually so lame that it did that at that moment. But I'm not going to open it again. We've got a stream to run. But yeah, so the clear version is enchanting. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a little bit more than this, but I think it looks really cool, and it's like a TS 100, TS 101 style. So yeah, really really cool. Some awesome soldering irons out there if you haven't gotten another one recently. All right, answering in order. Do you think it's better to know one field very well or to know a little bit from each field? Depends on your job. If you're a reverse engineer, you should probably know a lot about reverse engineering. Frankly, like so there are definitely still fields where being a specialist is either required or certainly a good idea. When it comes to other things, like my job, for example, like I need to be a generalist because I'm teaching people about little pieces of all these different parts of cybersecurity. So I really benefit from being a generalist because I know some stuff about RF hacking and I know some stuff about like doing web application pen testing and also electronics and also OSINT, like and Wi-Fi, like all these different little things like allow me to do a pretty like top-down approach to analyzing like a cybersecurity event or like looking at a business's defensive posture or it gives me a lot of I guess specific knowledge that would usually be a very expensive person where I can do their job in a very mediocre way, but it saves having to have that extra person sometimes when something just absolutely has to get done. So, generalist, especially if you do like deep dives and get pretty comfortable, like doing a specific job that's maybe somewhat repetitive, can be very valuable. They can really scale things very quickly. So, I would say being a generalist, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are still some jobs where being a generalist is just not going to work. For example, like I don't know enough about reverse engineering, or I don't know enough about web application pen testing to go out and do that business, like and compete with other people that do that for a living. Like I mean, they're gonna wipe the floor with me because I just don't have the hours doing their job to know all the nuances and details. I just know how to do it in a rough and dirty fashion if it needs to get done. So that's really the difference I would say between those two things is like if you're going to be a generalist then being in a job where you need to jump into other people's like roles and like understand what they're doing and either help out or manage a project like that's really important. Generalists make great project managers because like they're really good at seeing how different roles come together and like putting themselves in the shoes of the people who are doing those jobs. So I guess I can't really give you like a like yes what's really good or bad. It really again depends on which job you're applying for or what kind of career path you're looking to follow. um Let's see. How did you learn what components go on a PCB for your project's purpose? Okay, well, that happens in a variety of different ways. For the Nugget, I didn't really get a choice. I had already helped select a bunch of components for a project I was participating in, and I just had like hundreds of parts lying around from that canceled project. So I figured out that I needed to make a PCB around those parts, which is the opposite from like a normal project. So back when I was doing more PCB design, like in school, I would actually, think about the design that I want. So one example was I made a design that was like a capacitive touch design that used it's called a Darlington pair transistor to turn something on when you touch it. So looking at the things that could be done on the PCB just with like either the shape of the PCB or the path of the trace or whatever else, like that's something that I used to do to kind of eliminate components if they weren't necessary. Um, but yeah, this is not something I do a ton of. So like in the case that I'm creating like an add-on or a breakout or something, I mostly think about what the function is. Then it comes down to like which parts are specifically for that function and which parts are generally for that function. An example, like an infrared LED versus something meant for infrared transmitting and receiving are not going to be the same level of performance. The purpose-built thing might be a little bit more expensive, but it's going to work a lot better than the thing that's kind of generally for that task, but not optimized for it. So there's a lot to really think about when you're designing a printed circuit board, especially being aware of what component choices you have. That's probably been the most interesting thing that I've learned about deciding what components go on a PCB when I'm doing a project is being aware of all the different options out there instead of just going with the most obvious one. Um, One question: what is the best board for Flipper Zero if you want to go one step beyond? Do you ship your nugget to Europe? Yeah, we sure do. In fact, we were just in Europe doing a bunch of workshops there. But yeah, we definitely send them to Europe. For the Flipper, I honestly haven't tried very many add-on boards yet. I have a Flipper. Actually, I have a couple Flippers that I've distributed to my team to test them and learn from them. And, I haven't tried anything other than, like, the Wi-Fi breakout board, and that one I haven't flashed the Marauder to yet because it's back in Montana, and I only recently became aware that there was, like, a non-insane way of doing this. Because I had tried to do it before, and, like, the process looked like I needed to, like, solder together, like, an SD card thing, and I was just like, "I don't have time for this." But one of my friends, just showed me that there's actually, like, a non-crazy way of doing this that I'm super interested in checking out. So, I'm gonna have to get back to you on this one because I have not really tried any of the hardware add-ons. But of course, the Wi-Fi one with the Marauder seems really interesting to me. So if there's like a not insane way of installing that, I'm really interested. This one's I don't. Hi, DEF CON. Yeah, DEF CON. We're going to go to DEF CON this year, and based on our experience at the C3 conference, I think that we're probably going to do a lot more workshops than we've done before. I honestly enjoyed doing workshops more than I enjoyed being at the booth and selling nuggets all day. Even though we certainly made more money at DEF CON, it was a lot more fun to see people using what we made and also to be able to do like some other stuff like I did like an IoT like hex leaf workshop that was like super fun and super cool, and it attracted a lot of people besides like just purely security people, and I really enjoyed them, and they came back for some of the security classes and learned. So yeah, I would like to do more workshops this year at DEF CON, so I'm going to be doing a lot of outreach in the next couple of weeks. We have a lot of instructors as well. We brought 4 people to the C3 conference. We're going to be bringing even more to DEF CON, so look forward to some workshops at DEF CON that we will be doing. Running Risk 5 on your soldering iron, what a time to be alive. Yeah. Um, okay, so Jacob has a question that I have to preface and say that I am not an active red teamer. I have done red team stuff. I've evaluated red team tools, and I have, done like some general red team work, but that's not my primary job, and I haven't done that for a while. So that being said, take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. When using known exploits in an environment as a red teamer, what would you say is the most effective way to obfuscate the software to avoid YARA rules and other basic detection methods? The number one way that I've seen discussed at conferences and such is still to pack stuff in zip files. It sounds really stupid, but like zipping and zipping and zipping something like usually makes it's like too much work for a lot of security scanners to go in and unzip and unzip and unzip something. So like some of the most basic obfuscation tricks like still work for at least hiding a payload up until the last minute. I've also seen some DNS, some like sneaky DNS like exfiltration stuff and like DNS delivery stuff. But as I said, I don't do a lot of this myself, so evading firewall rules and such is not something that I typically spend a lot of time on because the environments I work in are not looking for me for the most part. Um, let's see. Sir, I am in class 7th. Can I start? Yeah, start anytime. There's always room in cybersecurity and ethical hacking for people who are interested. Um, okay, so this is a question I probably can't answer, but let's try it. I want to ask, in a matter of 2016, one of my friends sent me and uh, my other 3 friends a link on WhatsApp, and I did not even open the link, but he got access to my Facebook account. How? So zero-click exploits are usually expensive, but sometimes they go around and are kind of available for people to try out, like I guess before they get commercialized. Or before they get patched. So this is usually like relatively sporadic. So it's like something that comes out and then like the company's frantically trying to patch it. And for a limited time after it comes out, you're able to do it. Zero click exploits usually take advantage of like linked services. And since, well, I don't know about in 2016, but if you have, for example, services linked together, or if certain type of links like preview something that's vulnerable, that can be a way that a zero-click exploit is not opened. So like you get a message and something on your phone like generates a preview for the content. If that preview process is something that's vulnerable, then that can be something that maybe gives them access to like either a linked service or allows them to open up something else. Without more details, it'd be hard to say. So I probably can't really answer that question, but I will. That is generally how zero click exploits work. Like you'll get a message, some function of your phone will either try to find like a weird font it's specifying, or like generate a preview from a URL or something like that, and that can be enough to trigger the exploit. How did I start my career? I started my career as a photographer, I think, moving to Los Angeles, and did a lot of photo and video work. After that, I worked at a startup, and I was doing, well, okay. After that, I worked at a music venue for 4 years, and I was a bouncer. I got really good at ID verification, and I took away a stack of fake IDs that's about that thick. So if you were one of those people whose IDs that I took, it wasn't a good ID. I was pretty lenient. But yeah, so that was, I learned a lot about physical security, but I always pay very close attention to my manager. In any position and any job I've ever had, I look at my manager, and if my manager seems like stressed out and unhappy, I don't want to keep doing that job. Because it means that, like, best case scenario, I get promoted to that person's job, and then I'm stressed out and unhappy too. So when I looked at the manager of the music venue, they seemed stressed out and unhappy a lot of the time, and it made me realize that physical security, you don't make money. You are essentially like an emergency support staff. Everybody expects you to keep everybody safe and also make sure that in the event of like a natural disaster, or like God forbid, like a shooting or something, like you have a plan. And what I found was like nobody was interested in developing a plan, investing in a plan. Like they wanted a plan on paper, but actually doing the training to make sure everybody would be okay was like not something anybody was interested in. And this was all over the place. No matter what venue I went to, I found that this was pretty much the case. And I was like, well, two things. One, I'm not going out anymore to like music venues, because that now I know that, like, they don't have a good plan. And two, I don't want to work in physical security anymore. So that's when I got into tech startups. I started working at a logistics tech startup that was trying to be like Uber for trucking, and I learned a lot there. It was brutal. It was crazy, and after that, I worked for like Uber Eats for a little bit, like doing like tracking down restaurants that like were difficult to find, where like their owners like wouldn't have like an online presence at all, and they'd be trying to reach out to them, and I would be the one that like finds out the secret email address like located somewhere. But I did not like Uber as a company. I decided that I did not want to work there anymore. So I worked for a donut store for a little bit, decided maybe that wasn't worth it. Although it was fun. I actually really enjoyed that job. And then after that, I started working as a writer. So when I was working as a writer, I was doing it for Nullbyte. I started learning cybersecurity from other people's guides and finding out those guides were broken. So I would spend hours like Googling and figuring out what was going on. And then I would do write-ups like explaining the correct way to do it from these like broken or old guides. It seemed cool, but like didn't actually work. So I did that for a long time, and then I asked about doing video content for Nullbyte. I was told that that was not a good idea. They didn't want me to do it, but I did it anyway with a couple of my friends, and I was able to make something that people really responded to and started getting paid for that. And that gave me the opportunity to start really getting into content creation. So my experience in cybersecurity has been putting myself in the room with smart people and trying to have a reason to work with them. That originally was just reporting on their projects. And then eventually, after going back to school for a little bit to Pasadena City College, I got involved in student leadership, learned a little bit of computer science, and also got into electrical engineering. And that's kind of how I got where I am today. Eventually, the YouTube channel blew up. Varonis was interested in hiring me after seeing that some of my content was being censored on YouTube. And they thought that my content was important enough and enough of an outreach to the community that it was worth supporting. So a big shout out to Varonis for giving me a chance to work on content for the last 3 years without being threatened by YouTube. So that's kind of it. Like when you're really interested in a subject and you spend a lot of time on it, eventually you kind of just cross the line to becoming an expert at some point. And like I've never professed myself to be like, a doctor of hacks or something. The previous person who was at Nullbyte before me, their whole persona is just like, I am the mysterious master hacker and I know everything. But I don't think that's realistic. Like I said, like I'm a generalist. Like it's really hard to be a specialist in everything. And there's so much in cybersecurity that I think that's kind of like a disingenuous promise to someone that you're this like shadowy master of all. I think that it's much more realistic to admit like we're all beginners sometimes, and like it should be a comfortable part of the process. It's not like people that derive their entire ego from being like good at their one particular part of this field is like good for you, I guess. But like there's no reason to make other people feel less welcome. And my original experience getting into hacking was kind of 50-50. I had some people who were very gatekeepy, and like especially the security people were very gatekeepy, but then like the like hacker people were very cool. Like the so like That is how I started my career. And yeah, that was a very long story. Um, when's your next workshop and can we attend online? So our workshops were so successful at the C3 conference that I hit up all my friends and I'm like, let's just do them again online. I'm not totally sure how we would do the soldering one, so that does potentially take out two of the seven that we did at a C3 conference. But yes, I am planning on doing online workshops. They're going to be starting 2 weeks out from now, so I want to give everybody like time to attend and ruminate all that. So starting from 2 weeks out from now, look for online workshops that are kind of the same as the ones we did at the C3 conference. You can get the Marauder running at ESP8266 and connect with JPEG. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so some people giving advice, specifically Willow. Hello, good to see you from our Discord server. Um, yeah, talking about how to get the Marauder working on Flipper and also ESP8266. Can you please talk slowly? I'm gonna have to soon. I've been in California and Berlin and Hamburg where people talk about the same speed that I do right now, but I'm going back to Montana where people talk a lot slower. So well, let me just enjoy my last little bit of being able to talk fast before I have to slow it down. Um, Let's see. What's a good place to for a rooted? What's a good project for a rooted Pixel phone? I did Burp Suite. That's actually really cool. So I have a Pixel phone, but it's not rooted because I actually, it's like my regular phone, so that doesn't seem like a good idea just for one I carry around all the time. But I have really been interested in doing some more stuff on rooted phones. I did a couple guides on like stuff you could do with unrooted phones because a lot of people just don't want to do that. And frankly, I'm probably not going to do a guide on like a rooted device because like I don't recommend it for most people. We kind of had to make that call a while ago because most people just like mess it up or like cause more problems than they solve. But I'm super interested in kind of taking a dive into that now because again, I've been a little bit apprehensive to do that on the one pixel that I use, but I'm going to be getting a new one, so I'm going to take a look at that. What's the best place to buy your nuggets? I wouldn't buy them on eBay. I don't know where those come from. If there's nuggets on eBay, they're not mine. If you go to nugget.dev or retia.io, you can find all the information about our nuggets. There's also open source plans on there if you want to go and make your own. You can find those on GitHub. Um, what is your opinion on people doing a lot of CTFs to try to get the base knowledge to enter the cyber arena? Is it enough? I see a lot of people going for certifications. Straightforward. I think that honestly, CTFs give you the hands-on experience that's necessary to know the process and like the kind of pace and a lot of the things that you don't get from these more academic sources. I would consider someone who does a lot of CTFs to probably have a lot more like street smart, like than someone who just does certifications. So if I was like a hiring manager and I was looking at like a certain position, if I needed that person to have academic knowledge, I would lean towards someone with a bunch of certs. And if I wanted someone who had like good hands-on knowledge, especially if those CTFs were challenging like CTFs that are somewhat realistic, like I would tend to go with the CTF person that like knows their stuff. Like, I mean, if they're trash at CTFs, then like maybe that strategy doesn't work out anymore. But if they're scoring well and they're understanding the concepts and they're applying them, I prefer personally seeing applied work rather than academic work. So that like again, I'm not your hiring manager, but that's just what it looks like to me. Now, obviously, if the CTFs are light and fluffy, then it's no substitute for like a certification. And a lot of businesses do weigh pretty heavily on these certifications because they know what they mean. They might not understand what the CTF is. So it's a little bit of a complicated question. A hiring manager might not, as I do, understand that a difficult CTF is really quite an accomplishment to win, especially if it simulates like real world scenarios or is like challenging. So that benefit might be lost in translation, unfortunately, to someone who doesn't know what that CTF is. Um, Thank you for sharing your experience. Greetings from Argentina. Hi. Hello. Um, let's see. Advice from an online soldering class. If you begin to smell roast pork, you're holding the soldering iron wrong. Yeah, we tried to do a lot of soldering safety stuff this year, and we had like two burns, which I think is pretty good for the entire year. And one of them was a kid. So um, I'm thankful for your words in hacking and becoming a hacker. I was reaching a point of quitting because I wasn't running fast enough. I just want to be in the field. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like there's so much here that can make you feel like you're not learning fast enough. That just trying to learn a new tool and getting lost in the acronyms or the things that like you need to know something else in order to understand what it does. Wi-Fi was very much like that for me. I really had to learn networking before I understood what I was seeing in Wireshark, and I was able to like pick up little pieces and do specific tasks, but I really felt like there were huge gaps in my knowledge, and it was really embarrassing because it made me not want to talk about the things that I did know. So I understand the feeling. It's definitely something that a lot of people feel when they get into cybersecurity because this is an overwhelming field that has so many different parts to it that overlap. You know, so you're trying to learn one thing and you don't know like one part of that thing. It feels like it's really hard to catch up. All right. Let's see. I think that we are just about out of time for today. I hope that by my next stream, I will be out of this like purgatory and I'll be back in a place where I have like a proper set. But I mean, you guys don't care. It's fine. I can just be floating through space on these live streams, I guess. Um, all right. So I'll do one more question. Do you think someone must lower their standards to work at a smaller company to acquire experience on pen testing if they chose the career path? Um, that is purely like a personal choice. Like, you know, when you're looking for a job, there's different strategies. You can start at a place that will give you like more responsibility and then move on to a job that rewards that responsibility appropriately. Or you can try to get a position that's maybe a little bit more junior at like a bigger company and then grow into that role at the place you already want to be at. I think that they kind of have equal value in terms of strategies. I would tend to go with the second one, where like I would try to go to like a larger company and get like maybe a more junior role, with the understanding that I'm strongly interested in like growing into a different role, rather than like get overworked and underpaid for like several years to like build yourself up. I don't think that that sort of self sacrifice is necessary. Maybe it is in some places. I don't know. Like I haven't really seen a huge benefit from that aside from getting like burned out and kind of pissed off. And frankly, if you're good at it, most businesses will trap you in a position of making just enough money that it's hard to leave, but not actually paying you fairly. So I got trapped in roles like that many times. So I'm very leery of like intermediary steps that you could get stuck in, I guess is my perspective. So like follow your bliss, as they say. But in this case, I would tend to just go directly for one of the larger companies I wanted to work with, and just try to make myself the best candidate as possible, and like explain that like I really want to go. This is my career path. Like I see this as a part of it, and like this is a company I particularly want to work for. Yeah, like it's worth a shot. Anyway, kind of skips a step. I know, this is what I'm saying. I look like I've been, abducted and I'm being held for hostage, or like I'm in purgatory and like nothing is real. So sorry about that. We'll be back to like a more normal set starting next week. Okay, so um, that's all we have for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. It was a pretty lively stream today. If you have any more questions, make sure to jump on our Discord server. You can also leave the questions on our YouTube channel, Security Forward. And as always, a big shout out to Veronis for not only sending me to that awesome conference where I lied, I have one more thing to show. All right. So while we're thanking Veronis, we should thank them for this incredibly cool flower badge that I got at the C3 conference and put together with one of my friends. This is something I'm going to cover a little bit more, but this badge is running on MicroPython. So you just got to accept that it's going to be a little bit slow and maybe crash. And it is so incredibly cool. It is capacitive touch everything, and it's got these switches that I was talking, so poorly about. Let's see what it can do. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can do music. Let's do this guy. Wait. Okay, so it doesn't just do that, but this is a really cool project. Let me pull up the website for it. Give me a second. This was made for C3 Camp, so not the C3 conference. This was for like a previous event, and this is a capacitive like touch music synth. It does so many things. It has this beautiful like color display in the center, and it allows you to really like try out a bunch of cool stuff when it comes to like music, audio, capacitive touch, and then making cool things on the display. There's also lights. It's got a big old battery. And I have to say, this is just one of the most beautiful and creative and just well put together projects I've seen in a long time. So, we're almost into the stream. I don't have too much time to go into it. I just have to say, like, the assembly on this was like super easy. Um, Maybe not from this guide. There were other guides that involved like pictures, but I was just really excited to see another like beautiful and interesting project that's designed to get people who might not traditionally be interested in microcontrollers or circuits or stuff to want to participate in this and make art or make music or try like the synth features or even try programming their own app. So yeah, the assembly on this was like incredibly simple. It all kind of just presses in together. And it also comes with a audio cable for putting audio in and also audio out. So if you want to like mix samples and do other stuff with this, it is perfectly capable of doing that. Every one of these pedals is capacitive touch, and there's even some demos where you can like scroll up and down on the pedal, and it can detect it and scroll up and down on the screen by analyzing the capacitive touch. So of all the stuff that I saw, I have to say I'm super super happy about this one. It's so cool. It's so beautiful. It's just one of those like yes, it is very aesthetic. It's one of those things that has just like through and through like beautiful design aesthetic, and it is made for getting people excited about like hacking and like electronics. And then me, this is based on an ESP32. So the first thing I want to do is have it also like hack Wi-Fi, because like it for sure can. um, yeah, so there have been a number of different badges that were made on MicroPython recently. The Hackaday SuperCon badge was also MicroPython. That's around here somewhere, and also used a beautiful like round screen. So this is another one that's kind of like based on a similar, if not the same screen, and also the same programming language. That's again super awesome to see. So big shout out to Veronis for letting me go get this incredible badge, letting me meet the creators. Getting to learn all about these new materials that I'm going to be sharing with you guys for the rest of the year. So yeah, if you want to help out the stream, you can go to veronis.com/Kody. That's Kody. They do check to see how many people go to that link, and it lets them know that people enjoy the stream and that they should keep having me do it every week. So yeah, thank you everyone. I'll see you on our Discord server and also on our YouTube channel. So see you on Friday. Bye everyone.